Hello, Dr. Griego. Hello, class. This is our final week, and I wish everybody well. My presentation for our final statistical project is on fair trade coffee. My research topics on fair trade coffee. What I wanted to find out was, do coffee drinkers support fair trade coffee? Now, according to the National Coffee Association, there's over 100 million of us in America drinking coffee. Additionally, the latest survey from Zagat from earlier this year found that 83% of those who were surveyed drink coffee on a daily basis. Right. So I wanted to find the likelihood of this population size in supporting fair trade initiatives and practices. How this came about actually was my time here at APU. Before APU, I wouldn't um, have thought any more or less of fair trade practices or corporate social responsibility. Um, but through my previous classes, I had the opportunity to perform research and write up upon these topics, and these topics really open up my eyes and change my views on these issues. So much so that I've changed some of my shopping habits and my purchasing habits as well. For instance, I don't no longer buy any Nike products, because of their unfair labor practices and child labor practices that they use in Vietnam and some of the Asia Pac countries, as well as here locally here in Walmart. I don't shop at Walmart anymore because of their unfair labor practices. Overall, I just try to support fair trade products or products in general made by companies that have corporate social responsibility initiatives. That's just because I realized that my purchase is really, I'm supporting an underlying cause with my purchase. Not really much seen here in the States because of our affluent lifestyle, but it really affects other parts of the world, elsewhere in developing countries. So I was able to change some of my habits and shopping habits and purchasing habits. I thought this would be a great research topic to see if coffee, something I drink every day, would be able to do the same and change some of the a habit that one of us have, and to support an underlying message. Now I'll be discussing my methodology for the research and survey for my sample and research design and data collection and analysis. I proceeded as follows. I decided my sample size would be 100 individuals, 50 from my workplace and 50 from the public. My workplace sample, I asked colleagues across the departments. My public sample, I decided to visit some coffee shops in my local neighborhood. I used convenience random sampling for my selection. Now my survey were on printed copies. There were 3 construct questions. Each of the construct had 5 sets of questions. For the demographics questions, I had another 5 set of questions. In total, the survey had 20 questions. Again, I used convenience sampling and random sampling for my sample size. Now the participants in the survey rated the construct questions on a Likert scale. The scale had rating values from 1 to 6, 1 being strongly disagree and 6 was strongly agree. In between, there were slightly and moderate agree and disagree respectively. For my demographics questions, I had multiple choice, and I also had fill in the blank. Now for my key findings, I'll be starting off with my 3 constructs. All 3 of my constructs were found to be reliable. I'll be starting off with my coffee habit construct. That had an alpha of 0.729, and 47% of that was negative responses, while 53% of that was positive responses. Next, we had the fair trade preference construct, and that had an alpha of 0.908. 80% of that was negative responses, while 20% were positive responses. The last construct was on fair trade beliefs, and that had an alpha, actually that had the highest alpha of 0.940, and 64% of those responses were negative, while 36% were positive. Now for my descriptive statistics, I found my results to have quite a few low means, which meant more negative responses, as we saw on the previous slide. My lowest mean was 2.18 in the coffee habit construct, which was in regards to participants brewing their own coffee. Um, the highest mean was in the same construct was 4.08. This was in regards to participants drinking coffee on a daily basis. Now for my key findings in the t-test, I had no significant results there. My t-test in regards to gender on my three constructs were no significance. That was the same as well for my ANOVA tests on age group and ethnicity on my three constructs. But there was actually significance on my ANOVA test for education. So there was significance in my ANOVA test for education on my three constructs. I found participants with the education level of high school, some college but no degree, or an associate degree rated coffee habits lower than that of the education level with participants of having a bachelor's degree. The ANOVA test did not find any significance for education in regards to fair trade preference or fair trade beliefs. Now my correlation test found significance in all three of my constructs. Now for coffee habits, the more the participant rated coffee habits high, the more they rated fair trade preference high, and vice versa. Also, the more the participant rated coffee habits high, the more they rated fair trade beliefs as high as well, and vice versa. And lastly, the more the participants rated fair trade preference as high, the more they rated fair trade beliefs as high. My key findings for regression, that test found one of the dependent variable had low accuracy, but it was still significant, and that was coffee habits. The other two dependent variables, fair trade preference and fair trade belief, those were significant, but they had very high accuracy. I found when fair trade preference and fair trade belief were predictors, we had a 14.4% accuracy on the dependent variable coffee habit. So we can see from the ANOVA test, the higher they rated fair trade preference, the higher they rated coffee habits. Now on the other hand, when coffee habits and fair trade beliefs were predictors, we had an accuracy of the dependent variable fair trade preference that jumped up to 70.7%, and that's because the adjusted R-square was 0.707. This means that we had a 70% confidence level when participants rated fair trade belief or coffee habits high. They also rated fair trade preference high. Our last regression test found when coffee habits and fair trade preference were predictors, we had a 68.1% accuracy in predicting participants rating fair trade preference high. They would also rate fair trade beliefs high. Now I'll be summarizing the results in my conclusion. The research found that the majority of the participants drank coffee on a regular basis. I found that the most prevalent place was the workplace where they were consuming coffee. Of the sample size, I was able to determine the participants prefer purchasing coffee in coffee shops rather than brewing coffee at home. A quarter of the participants, they were passionate about coffee, but unfortunately that didn't translate into any support for fair trade coffee. The participants did not believe fair trade coffee was any better in quality or in taste. Now regarding the constructs, the three constructs were reliable. The coffee construct, that was successful in capturing participants' drinking habits in coffee. The fair trade preference construct found that 2/3 of the participants did not buy fair trade coffee. They also found that 2/3 of the respondents did not see fair trade coffee as superior in quality or in taste. The final construct, fair trade belief, that identified the majority of the participants really expressed low interest in supporting fair trade. Data that was significant that I found in the research was knowing the participants' fair trade preference, that we were able to predict with about 70% accuracy their coffee habits. And then the other significance was knowing that the educational level of our participants, we were able to determine the likelihood of their rating the coffee habits as high. From the results, I was able to come up with two recommendations. Now, the first is regarding fair trade education. Basically, the survey found over half of the participants purchased coffee at a coffee shop. So if one was an advocate of fair trade, they should focus their efforts in coffee shops and businesses, ultimately getting their buy-in and support for fair trade practices. I believe this would naturally trickle down to the consumers. The next recommendation is regarding workplace coffee. Um, the survey found that half of the participants primarily drank coffee in the workplace, and over two-thirds did not believe fair trade coffee tasted any better or was any better in quality. So office managers should consider cutting costs by eliminating possibly fancy coffee or fair trade coffee in their coffee budget, and their employees should be as happy drinking regular conventional coffee. So in closing, I'd like to say this project has really broadened my skills. I have learned, a different appreciation for surveys and statistical analysis. I'd like to thank you for your time viewing the presentation, and I hope to see you online.